Texas is about to decide something that could reshape American power for the next decade. If you watch this full video, you'll understand not just who might win in 2026, but why this election could quietly shift the balance of Washington itself. And if you value sharp, strategic breakdowns without noise, hit like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm this kind of serious analysis matters. Now let's get into it. March 3, 2026. That was primary election day in Texas. Not the final battle, but the sorting phase. The moment when parties chose their warriors for November. And what happened was not routine. It exposed fault lines. Inside parties. Inside voter coalitions. Inside Texas itself. First, Texas is no small state politically. It carries 40 electoral votes. It sends 38 members to the House. It has massive economic weight. Energy. Tech border policy. Military infrastructure. When Texas moves, Washington reacts. The 2026 cycle is a midterm year. That means it's traditionally a referendum on whoever controls the White House. Midterms are emotional. Turnout is lower. Base voters dominate. Anger travels faster than optimism. On March 3rd, Texans voted in party primaries. Democrats selected their Senate nominee. Republicans had a more dramatic fight. Because if no candidate clears 50%, Texas forces a runoff. And that's where tension builds. A runoff means two factions enter a head-to-head duel. Not just personalities. Ideologies. Strategy versus insurgency. Establishment versus disruption. The primary results didn't decide the Senate seat. They set up the psychological battlefield. And here's the overlooked detail most casual observers miss. Primary turnout tells you more about intensity than polling ever will. Intensity wins midterms. Not broad passive support. Intensity. If one side's voters are energized and the other side's voters are distracted, the energized side dominates, even if it's numerically smaller. Now let's zoom out. The general election is scheduled for November 3, 2026. That is when Texans will decide Senate seats, House races, the governor's office if applicable in cycle timing, and multiple statewide positions. Election night projections will start rolling in after polls close at 7 p.m. local time. But official certification? That happens later. Counties canvass. Ballots are verified. Margins are locked. So when will the winner be declared? Unofficially, election night. Officially, days or weeks later. And that difference matters in tight races. Because close elections create narratives. Narratives shape legitimacy. Legitimacy shapes power. Now here's where things get interesting. Texas has been historically Republican at the statewide level for decades. But demographic shifts are real. Urban counties like Harris, Dallas, Travis, and Behar trend Democratic. Rural counties remain deeply Republican. Suburbs are the battlefield. Suburbs decide Texas now. Not farmland. Not downtown skyscrapers. Suburbs. And suburban voters are pragmatic. They care about property taxes, schools, inflation, crime perception, border management, energy prices. Not ideological purity. This creates a paradox. Candidates must win primaries by appealing to base voters, but must win general elections by appealing to moderates. That forces repositioning. Watch how messaging changes between spring and fall. If a candidate sounds different in October than in March, that's not hypocrisy. That's electoral math. Now let's talk about the hidden lever. Turnout asymmetry. In presidential years, turnout explodes. In midterms, it contracts. Who shows up in 2026 will not look identical to who showed up in 2024. Younger voters historically participate less in midterms. Older voters remain consistent. That demographic tilt can favor conservatives. But only if enthusiasm holds. If fatigue sets in, surprises happen. And surprises in Texas don't just stay in Texas. Because control of the U.S. Senate can hinge on 1 or 2 seats nationally. If Texas were ever to flip unexpectedly, it would send shockwaves through Washington strategy rooms. Even a closer-than-expected race forces national parties to pour money into the state. Money that could have gone elsewhere. Resource diversion changes outcomes in other states. That's the domino effect most people don't see. Texas isn't just about Texas. It's about map strategy. Now here's a twist. The loudest online narrative is not always the dominant offline reality. Social media amplifies extremes. But elections are won in quieter rooms. Church groups, parent associations, local business communities, county party meetings. Ground game still matters. Door knocking still matters. Data modeling still matters. If you only measure Twitter noise, you misread the battlefield. Another layer, runoff dynamics. If a Republican runoff occurs in May, the tone can become sharper. Attacks intensify. And bruising primaries can weaken a nominee heading into November. Unless the party unifies quickly. Watch endorsements. Watch who consolidates donors. Watch who concedes gracefully. Unity after runoff is a signal of organizational strength. Disunity is oxygen for the opponent. Now let's talk psychology. Voters in 2026 will not just vote on policies. They will vote on perception of stability. Do they feel secure economically? Do they feel the border situation is controlled? Do they feel crime is rising or stabilizing? Do they feel cultural change is accelerating too fast? Perception beats statistics. Every time. If inflation is technically lower but groceries still feel expensive, perception wins. Campaigns understand this. Expect messaging that focuses on lived experience, not spreadsheets. And here's something deeper. Texas is becoming younger and more diverse over time. But political identity doesn't change overnight with demographics. Values shift slower than census numbers. Assumptions about inevitable political change are often premature. That's why analysts repeatedly predict dramatic shifts that don't fully materialize. Evolution is gradual, but pressure builds quietly. Now imagine election night. Maps light up red and blue. Counties report in waves. Urban centers report later. Rural counties report earlier. Early leads can flip. Commentators speculate. Margins narrow. And if the race is tight, lawyers get involved. Recounts become headlines. Confidence in institutions gets tested. That's why clarity about timelines matters. Projection is not certification. Certification is not concession. Concession is not defeat until certified. Process matters. Now let me ask you something strategic. What if the real story of Texas 2026 isn't who wins, but how close it becomes? A state that was once comfortably predictable becoming competitive changes national calculus. Even without flipping. Even without dramatic headlines. Competitiveness forces adaptation. And adaptation reshapes parties. So here's your payoff. If you understand intensity, turnout asymmetry, suburban psychology, runoff effects, and narrative control, you can read election night without emotional whiplash. You'll know what matters. And what is just noise. Texas 2026 will not be decided by viral clips. It will be decided by disciplined turnout and message calibration. And that's less dramatic, but far more powerful. Now I want you thinking. If suburban voters become the decisive block, which message breaks through? Security? Stability? Economic competence? Cultural reassurance? Drop your analysis in the comments. Because the smartest prediction is rarely the loudest one. And the next political earthquake rarely announces itself in advance. Texas votes November 3, 2026. But the real battle? It's already underway. Are you watching closely enough?